Cassandra Rowland awoke at 7:30 in the morning to the sound of water running in the bathroom. Tyrone, as usual in recent weeks, had gotten up before her and was preparing for another mysterious meeting. She stretched out on the king-size bed covered in Egyptian cotton and looked out their bedroom window. Beyond the glass stretched the perfectly manicured garden of their Beverly Hills home, where every bush was trimmed by a professional gardener and the lawn was watered by an automatic system. Pulling on an ivory silk robe, Cassandra descended the marble staircase into the spacious kitchen. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. Their housekeeper, Rosa, a punctual woman from Guatemala, had already prepared breakfast. Plates of sliced fruit, croissants, and freshly squeezed orange juice stood on the granite island. Tyrone sat at his desk, tucked into his phone, a thick brown file folder lying beside him. His usually impeccable appearance was a little shabby. The tie was askew, his shirt collar was wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. In 34 years of life, he'd learned to control his emotions, but lately, the tension was in his every movement. "Good morning, darling," Cassandra said, pouring coffee from a silver coffee pot. Her voice sounded slightly strained, as if she'd rehearsed the phrase. Tyrone looked up from the screen. His dark face expressed a tiredness that he tried to hide behind a familiar smile. "Hey, sunshine, I have to go soon, meeting at 8 in the morning." "Again?" Cassandra sat across from him, studying the expression on his face. "You promised yesterday that today we'd finally talk about going to Hawaii. Remember we wanted to book a hotel in Maui?" "Cass, I told you last night. I have a complicated case. I can't let a client down right now. It's a lot of money, you know?" Cassandra drank her coffee in silence, watching her husband carefully. Tyrone tapped his silver pen nervously on the marble countertop, an old habit that always betrayed his excitement. In 13 years of marriage, she'd learned his gestures and facial expressions by heart. "What's this secret business?" she asked, trying to keep her tone light. "You're a private detective, not a CIA agent. Cheating on the wife of a prominent businessman. Standard story. But the client is paranoid and demands complete confidentiality." Tyrone closed the folder with a sharp motion, but not before tucking it away in his leather briefcase. Cassandra noticed the peeking corner of a black and white photograph and the familiar logo of the security firm Neptune Security on the letterhead. "Tyrone?" She leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. "I'm not stupid at all. You've been a private investigator for 8 years. Why do you need credentials from a security firm? And what are these pictures?" Her husband's face changed instantly. The relaxation disappeared as if it had never existed. He quickly scooped up the papers and stuffed them into a folder, but his hands trembled. "It's none of your business, Cass. It's just work stuff." "How is it none of my business?" Cassandra's voice was higher and sharper. "I've been your wife for 13 years. I have every right to know what my own husband is doing." Tyrone stood up from the table, adjusting his dark blue tie and buttoning his jacket from his $3,000 suit. "You have your successful blog, your 200,000 loyal subscribers, your beautiful social media life. Isn't that enough? Stay out of my professional affairs, Cassandra." Cassandra rose from her chair as well. She was almost a head shorter than her husband, but that didn't embarrass her at all now. "My business?" Her voice was ringing with indignation. "Very interesting. So when you asked me to tell my subscribers every week about our happy, perfect marriage, that was just my business? And when you asked me to show off our luxurious home, our new car, our wonderful lifestyle, that was just my thing too? Cass, don't get hysterical right now." "Yes, I am." Cassandra stepped toward him and grabbed the folder before Tyrone could put it away. "Stop lying to my face all the time." The folder slipped from his hands, and the document scattered across the polished marble floor of the kitchen. Cassandra quickly crouched down, picking up the papers, and suddenly froze when she saw the contents. The black and white photos showed unfamiliar men with tattoos on their necks and arms, factory warehouses, cardboard boxes, and plastic bags of white powder. The official seal of the Los Angeles Police Department was clearly visible in the right corner of one of the photos. What is this, Tyrone? Cassandra's voice became quiet and tense. Explain it to me immediately. Tyrone stood silent, jaw clenched, and looked down at his wife. Is it drugs? Cassandra held up another document, a typewritten report marked confidential. Police reports on detainees, a list of warehouse addresses. Good God, Tyrone, are you really working for drug dealers? Give me the documents immediately, he said in a flat but threatening tone. No. Cassandra retreated to the large French window, clutching the papers to her chest. Explain first. Explain to me right now why you have secret police reports on drugs, why you have lists of drug warehouse addresses. Tyrone approached her slowly, like a predator, his hands clenched into fists. Cass, you're completely misunderstanding the situation. It's a lot more complicated than you might think at first glance. More complicated? Cassandra laughed, but it was hysterical and unpleasant. What could be complicated? You're helping drug dealers. You're using your old connections in the police department to make criminals avoid arrests and searches. Shut up right now, Tyrone shouted so loudly that Cassandra flinched in surprise. In all the years of their marriage, she had never seen her husband in such a state. Don't you talk to me like that. Cassandra clutched the documents even tighter to her. For 13 years I have been a perfect wife. 13 years of telling the world what a wonderful, honest husband I had. And you turned out to be a common criminal. Tyrone grabbed her wrist sharply, squeezing her fingers so hard that they left red marks on her skin. Give me those papers immediately and forget everything you've seen. Forever. Let me go now. He unclenched his fingers, but he didn't move a step away, hovering over his wife with all his massive bulk. Cass, if you tell anyone about this... Tell me what? Cassandra rubbed her aching wrist, keeping her eyes on her husband's face. What will you do to me? Kill your own wife? Don't talk outright nonsense. Nonsense? Cassandra stepped up close to him, head cocked up to look him in the eye. Fine. I'm going live today at 4 o'clock sharp. 200,000 loyal subscribers will be listening to every word I say. You want to know exactly what I'm going to tell them? Tyrone's face instantly turned pale under his swarthy skin. Cass, just don't do anything stupid. About who my dear husband really is. About the fact that all of our material prosperity, our beautiful home, cars, and vacations are built solely on the proceeds of the drug trade. That I have lived side by side with a real criminal for 13 years. You wouldn't dare do such a thing. Yes, I would, Cassandra shouted so loudly that her voice echoed off the high ceilings. No more constant lies. My subscribers and the world must finally know the real truth. Tyrone took deep breaths, clearly trying to pull himself together. He clenched and unclenched his fists slowly, as if fighting the urge to punch. If you really do this, he said very slowly, enunciating each word, you will regret this decision for the rest of your life. Is that a threat? It's a final warning. Cassandra threw the documents onto the marble floor with all her might, and they scattered all over the kitchen. Get out of my house right now, and don't ever come back. Tyrone silently, methodically gathered up all the papers, folded them neatly into a folder, and headed for the front door. At the threshold, he turned to his wife one last time. Think carefully about the consequences, Cass. Think very seriously. The front door slammed shut with a thud. Cassandra heard his black BMW start, then the sound of the engine faded away, and there was complete silence. She sank heavily into the nearest chair, her legs shaking with nervous tension. Her mind was spinning chaotically with scraps of phrases from the documents she had looked at, the faces of strangers from photographs. Cassandra spent the next half hour in a daze, then rose, took a long, hot shower, and dressed carefully. It was necessary to seriously prepare for the upcoming broadcast. Usually she planned all the content in advance, thought out every phrase, but today, all the plans changed dramatically. At exactly 2:30 in the afternoon, a bright red Mini Cooper pulled up in front of the house, and Vivian Okafor, Cassandra's personal assistant for the past 2 years, stepped out. She was a tall, slender 26-year-old with a short, trendy haircut and always impeccable makeup, carrying a huge professional bag filled with makeup and technical equipment for the shoot. "Hi, Cass." Vivian kissed her on both cheeks as usual. "Ready to conquer the internet today?" "Sure," Cassandra replied briefly as she let her assistant into the house. Vivian scrutinized her employer's face, noting the tense expression and the nervous glint in her eyes. "Is everything all right? You look a little upset or tired." "I'm absolutely fine. Just didn't sleep very well last night." They went up to the second floor to the home studio, a specially converted spacious room with professional lighting, several video cameras and sound recording equipment. Vivian habitually began to arrange various cosmetics on the shelves, check the operation of all the equipment, and adjust the right angle of lighting. "What topic are we going to tell our loyal viewers about today?" she asked, adjusting the brightness of the main spotlights. "Family life," Cassandra replied, settling into her favorite chair in front of the main camera. "Family again? Last week we already had an in-depth topic about family values and the importance of marriage. Can't we come up with something a little more recent?" "No, today's topic is going to be very special. Not like the previous ones at all." Vivian shrugged her shoulders in surprise and turned on all the cameras for pre-testing. Cassandra automatically smiled into the center lens, but the smile turned out unnatural and very strained. "Cass, maybe we should reschedule the broadcast for tomorrow." Vivian turned off the camera and turned to her. "You really do look quite out of sorts today." "No, not at all. Today is a very important day for me." Vivian pulled out her cell phone and moved to the far corner of the room, closer to the window. "Excuse me for 1 second. I need to answer this right away. It's a family thing." Cassandra nodded absent-mindedly, completely absorbed in her own heavy thoughts about her impending exposure. She was completely oblivious to the fact that Vivian was speaking into the phone, unusually quiet and obviously nervous. "Yes, I understand perfectly well," Vivian whispered faintly into the phone, glancing back at Cassandra. "This afternoon, 4 o'clock sharp. She's definitely going to tell me everything. Yes, I fully realize the gravity of the situation. Of course, I'll do whatever's necessary." Vivian quickly tucked her phone into her jeans pocket and turned to Cassandra with her usual friendly smile. "Sorry for the distraction. So, shall we begin full preparation for the broadcast?" They spent the next hour and a half in the usual pre-air routine. Vivian professionally did Cassandra's elaborate makeup, styled her long hair into an elegant style, and helped her choose appropriate clothing and jewelry. Cassandra hardly spoke, only answered questions one syllable, mentally rehearsing her upcoming performance. At exactly 4:30 in the afternoon, Vivian pulled out a small, elegant jar of expensive hand cream from her bulky bag. "A brand new product from Laura Mercier," she said enthusiastically. "Would you like to try it? They say it's fantastically moisturizing and has an amazing fragrance." Cassandra reached out with both hands palms up. The cream was indeed very pleasant to the touch, delicately scented with French lavender and expensive oils. She rubbed it thoroughly into the skin of her hands, completely unaware that Vivian was watching her every move intently and intensely. "It smells wonderful," Cassandra said absently, inhaling the scent. "Yes, I like that smell very much too." Vivian instantly put the jar back in her bag in a quick, almost frantic motion. Cassandra noticed that her assistant's hands were trembling slightly, but noticeably. "So, are you all set for your performance?" Vivian asked, turning on all the cameras and checking the sound one last time. Cassandra nodded decisively, staring directly into the center lens. At exactly 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Vivian turned on the red light signaling the start of the live broadcast. Cassandra smiled habitually into the camera, but this time the smile came with great difficulty. The audience counter in the corner of the screen was growing rapidly. 100, 300, 500 people were joining the broadcast every minute. "Hello, my dears," Cassandra began in her usual warm voice. "What a pleasure to see you all on this beautiful Thursday. I hope everyone is in a great mood and having a wonderful day." The comments in the chat room flowed in a river. Regular subscribers greeted her with hearts and exclamation points. New viewers asked questions about the upcoming topic. Cassandra Machine read some messages aloud, answered the standard questions about cosmetics and clothes. "Today I want to talk to you about family," she continued, fixing a lock of hair. "About how important it is to be honest with each other. How important trust is between spouses." Vivian stood behind the camera, controlling the quality of the picture and sound. Her usually confident face expressed an unaccustomed restlessness. She kept glancing at her watch and fidgeting with the bracelet on her wrist. "You know, girls," Cassandra leaned back in her chair, "I've always told you how wonderful my husband is, how happy we are, how lucky we are to have each other. And it's true, we really have been very happy for many years." The number of viewers passed the mark of 2,000 people. Many wrote that they were waiting for another story about family happiness and romantic moments. But today I want to talk about the other side of marriage. Cassandra rubbed her temples, feeling a little dizzy. About what happens when people stop being honest with each other. Vivian took a step forward, as if she wanted to say something, but stopped. Cassandra didn't notice the movement, concentrating on her words. "Imagine a situation." Cassandra's voice became more serious. "You live with a man for many years, trust him completely, and then suddenly you find out that he has been leading a double life. What do you do in such a situation?" In the chat began to appear messages with advice and support. Many subscribers decided that Cassandra was speaking in generalities or discussing someone else's story. Cassandra rubbed her hands against each other. The skin suddenly became unusually dry, despite the recently applied cream. There was a strange metallic taste in her mouth, which she tried to wash down with water from the glass. "What if this man," she continued, leaning slightly toward the camera, "turned out to be not just a liar but a criminal? If your entire well-being was built on someone else's grief and suffering?" Vivian turned sharply toward her, eyes widening with horror. She realized Cassandra wasn't going to speak in streamlined phrases. "Cass," she called softly, but the microphone didn't pick up her words. Cassandra felt a chill run down her spine. Her hands were clammy with sweat, and her heart was racing. She chalked it up to nervousness before an important conversation. "Girls, I want to tell you the truth about my life," she said, looking directly into the lens. "The real truth, not the pretty picture I've been painting all these years." The number of viewers reached 3,500. There was alarm in the comments. Many felt something unusual was happening. "My husband Tyrone," Cassandra's voice trembled, "whom I imagined to you as an honest private detective, is actually—" She stopped, feeling a sharp pain in her stomach. Her breathing became shallow, and colored spots flashed before her eyes. "I'm sorry," she mumbled, gripping the armrests of her chair. "I don't feel well." Vivian made a motion toward the camera, as if she wanted to turn off the broadcast, but Cassandra gestured for her to stop. "No," she said more loudly. "I have to say it. People need to know." Panic broke out in the chat room. Viewers wrote that Cassandra looked sick, advising her to call a doctor. But she kept talking, fighting a growing weakness. "My husband works for drug dealers," she blurted out, breathing heavily. "He has connections with the police. He helps the criminals avoid arrest. All our money is drug money." Vivian turned pale and clung to the wall. Her worst fears were realized. "I found documents this morning." Cassandra spoke faster and faster, realizing that time was running out. "Photos, reports, lists of addresses. He threatened me when I said I would tell you the truth." The pain in her stomach became unbearable. Cassandra bent in half but continued to stare into the camera. "Girls, if anything happens to me," her voice became hoarse, "know that I didn't lie. There's a safe in our house in Tyrone's study, behind the painting of the sailboat. There are documents in there that will prove everything." The number of viewers grew to 5,000, many reposting the link, realizing that something outrageous was happening. "I've been poisoned," Cassandra whispered. but the microphone amplified her words. The hand cream had been poisoned. She turned her head to Vivian, who stood petrified. "You..." Cassandra tried to rise from the chair, but her legs wouldn't hold. "You work for them." Vivian shook her head negatively, feigning horror and incomprehension. "Cass, what are you saying? You need a doctor." But Cassandra could no longer answer. Her breathing became ragged, her vision blurred. She looked at the camera with all her might. "Remember," she wheezed, "Tyrone Rowland, the drugs, Vivian Okafor." Her head fell back against the back of the chair. Her eyes closed, her arms hanging lifelessly. On the screen, her breasts stopped rising and falling. Hysteria broke out in the chat room. Thousands of viewers were simultaneously writing messages, many calling emergency services, some recording what was happening on their devices. Vivian stood for a few seconds in a complete daze, then abruptly turned off the camera. The broadcast was interrupted, but it was too late. Thousands of people had witnessed the death of Cassandra Rowland. "Oh my God!" Vivian whispered, grabbing the phone. "What have I done?" She dialed the emergency number, trying to speak in a voice shaking with terror. "Hello? I need an ambulance! Hurry! My friend passed out during a live broadcast!" The dispatcher asked for an address and details. Vivian named the street and house number and described Cassandra's condition, portraying panic and despair. "I don't know what happened," she shouted into the phone. "We were preparing for the broadcast, everything was fine, and then she started to feel sick. She said some strange things about her husband, about poisoning. Get over here as soon as you can." While Vivian talked to the dispatcher, she took a quick look around the studio. The jar of cream was already in her bag, no evidence left behind. But the videotape of the broadcast. She realized that many viewers must have saved the tape. 12 minutes later, an ambulance arrived at the house with sirens blaring. A police car arrived next, standard procedure for sudden deaths. Vivian met them at the front door, showing every sign of shock and grief. "She's upstairs in the studio," she shouted, pointing to the stairs. "Hurry up, maybe it's not too late." The paramedics went up to the studio and immediately realized that there was nothing they could do. Cassandra was sitting in a chair with her eyes closed, her skin a grayish tint. One of the paramedics checked for a pulse on her neck. Another illuminated her pupils with a flashlight. "Death occurred about 15 minutes ago," the senior medic said, removing his gloves. "We'll have to call the coroner." The policeman began to question Vivian, who was sobbing in the corridor, leaning against the wall. "Tell me what happened," he asked, pulling out a notebook. "We were getting ready for our usual broadcast," Vivian sobbed. "Cass was a little weird this morning, but I thought she was just tired. Then the broadcast started, and all of a sudden she felt sick. She was saying something about her husband, about being poisoned. I thought it was stress." "Where's her husband now?" "I don't know. He left for work this morning. He probably doesn't know what happened yet." The policeman wrote down Tyrone's contact details and promised to get in touch with him. Vivian continued to play the part of the shocked friend, but inside she was counting the minutes. Every second could prove crucial. The house gradually filled with people. A coroner, a medical examiner, a detective for the preliminary investigation arrived. Vivian answered questions, provided information about the last days of Cassandra's life. But the worst was ahead. The recording of the broadcast was already circulating on the internet, and thousands of people were discussing the last words of the deceased blogger. Detective Indira Chakrabarty received the call at 6:30 in the evening, just as she was about to leave the station after a long day of paperwork in a burglary case. A 40-year-old woman of Indian descent who had been with the LAPD for 15 years, she specialized in sudden deaths and homicides, and was methodical and intuitive. "Chakrabarty," she answered the dispatcher's call while putting on her jacket. "Indira, we have an unusual situation in Beverly Hills. A woman has died live on social media. Thousands of witnesses, possible poisoning. We need to go now." Indira wrote down the address, and 20 minutes later parked her squad car next to the Rowlands' house. The mansion was impressive in size, a 3-story light-colored stone building with a perfectly manicured garden and a circular driveway. 2 ambulances, a police car, and a black forensics van were already parked out front. Officer Rodriguez, who was the first to arrive on the scene, met her at the front door. "What do we have?" Indira asked, pulling out a notepad and pen. Cassandra Rowland, 33 years old, popular blogger on Instagram, died during a live broadcast at about 4:20 in the afternoon. Witness, Vivian Okafor, her personal assistant. According to the eyewitness, the victim claimed she was poisoned. "Where is the assistant now?" "In the living room, giving a statement to Sergeant Wilson. She's pretty shaken up, but she's answering questions." Indira walked into the spacious living room, where a young black woman in jeans and a pink blouse sat on a white couch. Vivian held a glass of water and periodically wiped her eyes with a paper napkin. Sergeant Wilson was seated next to her, taking notes on her statement. "Ms. Okafor," Indira addressed her, "I'm Detective Chakrabarti. I'm sorry for your loss. I realize this is very difficult, but I need to ask you a few questions." Vivian looked up, her eyes red with tears. "Of course, Detective. I'll do whatever I can to help. Tell me in detail about today, from this morning." Vivian took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. "I arrived at Cass's at 2:30, as usual before the broadcasts. She seemed a little strange, nervous, said she hadn't slept well. We were getting ready for the broadcast, doing makeup, picking out clothes, setting up the equipment. And what happened during the broadcast itself? At first, it was business as usual. Cass greeted the viewers, answered comments. Then she started talking about family issues. I thought it was just another topic of discussion. But gradually, she started to look sick." Vivian stopped, covering her face with her hands. She started saying horrible things about her husband, that he was a criminal, that he worked with drug dealers. I was shocked. Then she got really sick, and she said she'd been poisoned. What exactly did she say about being poisoned? That the hand cream was poisoned. But that's impossible. I gave her the cream myself, a new product from a famous brand. Indira wrote down this information, noting to herself the girl's emotional reaction. "Where is this cream now?" "In my bag upstairs in the studio. Would you like me to show you?" "You will, but later." "Where is the victim's husband?" "Tyrone left for work this morning. I tried to call him, but he's not answering his cell." Indira went up to the second floor where forensic scientist Dr. Kenneth Harris was examining the body. Cassandra was still sitting in the chair, head thrown back, arms dangling lifelessly. Her face retained a calm expression, but her lips had taken on a bluish tint. "What can you say beforehand, Doctor?" Indira asked. Harris, an older man with a gray beard, looked up from his notebook. Classic signs of fast-acting poisoning: lividity of the lips, dilated pupils, no signs of struggle. Judging by the time of death, the substance took effect within 30 to 40 minutes of ingestion. What could it have gotten in? Food, drink, skin contact. We need a full-talk screen. Indira looked around the studio. There was a glass of water, half empty, on the table next to the chair. The cameras were off, but the red recording light was still on one of them. "Was the airwaves being recorded?" she asked the technician present. "Yes, but the recording is stored on Instagram's servers. We'll have to get an official request. Can we check the equipment now?" The technician nodded and turned on one of the monitors. An image from the last few minutes of the recording appeared on the screen. Cassandra was sitting in the same chair but was still alive, saying something into the camera. "Is there sound?" "Sure." Indira heard Cassandra's husky voice. "Girls, if anything happens to me, know that I didn't lie. There's a safe in our house in Tyrone's study, behind the painting of the sailboat." The detective wrinkled her nose. If that was true, they had a specific place to look for evidence. Could we see the whole tape? It would have to wait. The broadcast lasted about 20 minutes. It would take time to reconstruct the full version. Indira went downstairs and asked Vivian to show her the cream. The girl led her back to the studio and took out a dainty jar from a large cosmetic bag. "This one," Vivian said in a trembling voice. "Laura Mercier Hand Moisturizer. I bought it yesterday at the department store. Do you have the receipt? It's probably in my purse somewhere." Indira carefully picked up the jar with tweezers and placed it in a plastic evidence bag. The cream had to be sent to the lab right away. "Ms. Okafor, have you used this cream yourself?" "No, I bought it especially for Cass. I'm allergic to lavender." "When exactly did Cassandra use it?" "Right before the broadcast, about 10 minutes before it started. I suggested she get her hands cleaned up." Indira wrote down every detail, mentally constructing a timeline. If the cream had indeed been poisoned, it meant premeditated murder. At 7:30, a black BMW pulled up to the house. Out of the car stepped a tall man in an expensive suit, Tyrone Rowland. He ran to the front door, his face a look of panic and grief. "Where's my wife?" he shouted, bursting into the house. "What's wrong with Cass?" Indira met him in the hallway. "Mr. Rowland, I'm Detective Chakrabarty. I'm sorry for your loss." Tyrone stopped, breathing heavily. "Is it true? Is she really, dead?" "Unfortunately, yes. Your wife passed away this afternoon during a live broadcast." Tyrone collapsed into the nearest chair, covering his face with his hands. "Oh my God, I can't believe it. We had a little fight this morning, and I left for work. If I had known..." Indira watched his reaction carefully. The grief looked genuine, but something in the man's demeanor was alarming. He wiped his dry eyes too often, and his hands trembled not from grief, but from nervousness. "Mr. Rowland, I need to ask you a few questions about your relationship with your wife. Have you had any serious problems?" Tyrone raised his head. "The usual marital disagreements. Nothing major. What was the argument this morning about?" "Finances. Cass wanted to spend a lot of money on home renovations. I thought it was unnecessary." Indira noticed the man was avoiding direct eye contact. "Did your wife say anything about your work affairs?" "Sometimes she did. But I'm a private investigator. I can't talk about my clients." "Mr. Rowland, during the broadcast, your wife made some serious statements about your activities. Claimed you were involved with drug dealers." Tyrone's face changed. Surprise changed from surprise to wariness. "That's absurd. Cass was sick, talking nonsense. She must have had some kind of seizure. She also mentioned a safe in your office. I need to see it. Do you have a warrant? I can have one within the hour. Or you can give me your voluntary consent." Tyrone hesitated for a few seconds. "Okay, but I want to be present for the inspection." They went up to the office, a spacious room with leather furniture and shelves filled with forensic books. On the wall behind a solid oak desk hung a painting of a sailboat, just as Cassandra had described. Tyrone removed the painting, revealing a built-in safe behind it. His hands shook visibly as he dialed the combination. "There's only house and car insurance papers in there," he muttered. The safe opened, and Indira peered inside. Indeed, most of the contents were the usual documents: insurance policies, wills, copies of passports. But in the far corner lay another brown folder. "What's that?" Indira asked, pointing to the folder. "Work materials, nothing special." The detective pulled out the folder and opened it. Inside were the same photos and documents Cassandra had talked about on the air. Shots of warehouses, people with tattoos, bags of white powder. Some of the documents had LAPD stamps on them. "Mr. Rowland," Indira said in a calm tone, "I need to get an explanation about these materials." Tyrone turned pale. They're case files. I'm investigating police corruption on behalf of the feds." "Then do you have documents to prove that cooperation?" "My handler has them." Indira knew the man was lying. His story didn't hold up to scrutiny, and the documents in the safe looked like dirt, not an investigation. "Mr. Rowland, I must warn you that these documents will be examined by experts. If there is a link to criminal activity, you could face serious charges. I am willing to cooperate with justice, Tyrone replied, but his voice sounded uncertain. Indira photographed the contents of the safe and took the folder as evidence. It was becoming clear that Cassandra's death could have been related to an attempt to cover up her husband's criminal activities. Descending to the living room, the detective turned again to Vivian, who was still sitting on the sofa. "Ms. Okafor, were you aware of any problems in the Rowlands' marriage? Cass sometimes complained that Tyrone had become withdrawn, said he worked nights a lot, took odd phone calls, but I thought it was just work stuff. Had she mentioned any problems this morning?" Vivian hesitated to answer. Said she'd learned something important about her husband, but she didn't give any details. Indira noted the pause. Perhaps the assistant knew more than she was saying. By 8 p.m., the preliminary investigation at the scene was complete. The body had been sent to the morgue for autopsy, the physical evidence to the lab. Indira received a copy of the broadcast recording and prepared for a detailed examination of the last minutes of Cassandra Rowland's life. Sitting in the car in front of the house, the detective reviewed the notes in her notebook. The picture of the crime was gradually becoming clearer. A wife discovers her husband's criminal connections, threatens to expose them, and someone decides to eliminate her. It remained to find out who exactly performed the murder and on whose orders. Indira Chakrabarti spent the next 3 days working hard on the case of Cassandra Rowland. Toxicological analysis confirmed her suspicions. In the hand cream was found a rare poison of plant origin, curarine, which in large doses causes paralysis of the respiratory center and cardiac arrest. This poison is virtually tasteless and odorless, which made it an ideal weapon for covert assassination. The detective sat in her office at the station, studying the documents from Tyrone's safe. The photos and reports told the story of a well-organized criminal network that used corrupt police officers to get information on upcoming raids and arrests. Names, addresses, dates of operations, all of which allowed the drug traffickers to stay one step ahead of law enforcement. At the center of the scheme was one Damien Asante, whose name appeared in the documents more often than any other. A database check revealed that the 35-year-old Asante had prior convictions for drug trafficking and money laundering, but had avoided serious charges for the past 5 years. "Detective Chakrabarti," Sergeant Martinez called to her as she entered the office with a folder in her hand. "I have some information on Asante. Our informant in the Southern District says that this guy runs a large group that controls cocaine shipments from Mexico." Indira lifted her head from the documents. "What do we know about his connections in the police department? He's rumored to have several sources among the cops, but no one knows any specific names." "Tyrone Rowland hasn't been on the force for 8 years, Indira pondered aloud. But he still had connections. Surely there must be current officers who give him information for money. She picked up a photograph of Vivian Okafor from the table, taken during the interrogation. "What do we know about the assistant? Did you check her background?" "Clean as a tear," Martinez replied. 26 years old, marketing degree, worked for Rowland for 2 years. No criminal record, not even a traffic ticket. "Too clean," Indira muttered. "And financial status?" "Officially, she makes $40,000 a year as a personal assistant, but she has almost $100,000 in the bank." The detective raised her eyebrows. Such an amount was clearly not in line with the income of an ordinary assistant. "Where'd the money come from?" "The bank says it's regular in cash, $5,000 to $7,000 every month. It's been going on for a year and a half." The picture was starting to clear. Vivian was getting extra income from an unknown source, which could mean she's connected to the Asante crime ring. "We should check her phone records," Indira decided, "and put her under surveillance." That same evening, the detective received the results of her analysis of Vivian's phone records for the past month. Among the many ordinary calls stood out one number, to which the girl called almost every day, but the conversations were short, no more than a minute. A check showed that the number was registered to a fake person, but it was possible to trace its location. The phone was in the Compton neighborhood, in the same block where, according to drug control, one of Asante's bases was located. "Martinez!" Indira called out to her colleague. "We're taking Okafor in tomorrow morning for additional questioning and request a warrant to tap her phone." The next morning, Vivian was brought to the station for a second interrogation. The girl looked calm, even too calm for someone who had recently lost a close friend. She was dressed in a strict black suit, her hair neatly styled, her makeup impeccable. "Ms. Okafor," Indira began, taking a seat across from her in the interview room. "I have a few additional questions about your relationship with Cassandra." "Of course, Detective. I'm willing to assist in the investigation." "Tell me about your income. How do you have almost $100,000 in the bank on an official salary of $40,000 a year?" Vivian was confused for a moment, but quickly pulled herself together. "I have additional earnings. I consult other bloggers, help with social networks. Can you provide documents confirming these incomes? Most of the work is unofficial, for cash. Do you know Damien Asante?" This time Vivian couldn't hide her reaction. Her face turned pale, her hands clenched imperceptibly into fists. "I've never heard that name before." "That's strange." Indira placed the phone records on the table. "Because you've been calling the number associated with Mr. Asante almost every day for the last month." Vivian remained silent, looking at the document. "Ms. Okafor, I think it's time to tell the truth. Cassandra Rowland was murdered, and all the evidence points to you having something to do with it." "I didn't kill Cass," Vivian replied sharply. "She was my friend." "Then explain how the cream you gave her before the broadcast had a deadly poison in it." The silence dragged on for several minutes. Vivian stared at the table, clearly struggling with her inner conflict. "I want a lawyer," she finally said. "That's your right," Indira agreed. "But remember, the sooner you tell the truth, the better the chances of leniency." While Vivian waited for her lawyer, Indira received new information from the surveillance team. Damien Asante had left his usual base in Compton and was apparently preparing to flee the city. His men were destroying documents and removing property. "We need to act fast," the detective told Captain Jones. "If Asante disappears, we'll lose a key link in the chain of custody. What do you suggest?" "We take Tyrone Rowland right now. We've got enough evidence of corruption and aiding and abetting the drug trade. Maybe under pressure, he'll cooperate." An hour later, Tyrone was brought into the station in handcuffs. The ex-cop looked broken, suit wrinkled, face unshaven, hands shaking. The look of a man who realizes his life has been ruined for good. "Mr. Rowland," Indira said, as he sat down in the interrogation chair, "you are under arrest on suspicion of corruption, aiding and abetting drug trafficking, and possible involvement in the murder of your wife." Tyrone closed his eyes. "I didn't kill Cass. I swear I would never hurt her." "But you were working for Damien Asante." "Yes," he admitted quietly. "For the last 3 years, I've been feeding him information about police operations. He paid good money, and I needed the funds to maintain the house, the cars, Cass's lifestyle." "And when your wife found out, you decided to eliminate her?" "No, I tried to stop her, convince her to keep quiet, but to kill her, that wasn't me." "Then who was it?" Tyrone raised his head, desperation in his eyes. "When I called Damien and told him that Cass was going to tell me everything on the air, he said he'd fix the problem." "How?" "I don't know. I thought he was going to try to intimidate her or bribe her. I never thought that Vivian..." "So Vivian was working for Asante?" "Yes. She was embedded with us 2 years ago. Damien wanted to control my family, know our plans, our moods. Vivian reported everything to him." Tyrone's confession confirmed the detective's suspicions. Vivian wasn't just an assistant, but an agent of a criminal gang, keeping tabs on the family of a corrupt cop. "Where's Asante now?" "I have no idea. He hasn't contacted me since Cass died." While Indira was interrogating Tyrone, news came that Vivian's lawyer had arrived at the station. The girl was willing to testify in exchange for a deal with the DA's office. "Detective Chakrabarty," said the lawyer, a young man in an expensive suit. "My client is willing to cooperate fully with the investigation. She pleads guilty to the murder of Cassandra Rowland, but asks that it be considered that she acted under duress. Vivian sat next to her lawyer, her confidence finally evaporating. She now looked like a frightened young woman caught up in a situation that was beyond her capabilities. "Ms. Okafor, tell me what happened," Indira asked. "Damien recruited me 3 years ago," Vivian began in a shaky voice. "He had compromising material on my brother, who worked in his organization. He threatened to put my brother in jail if I didn't agree to help." "What was your help?" "At first, just to keep tabs on the Rowland family, report on their plans, their moods, their conversations. Damien wanted to make sure Tyrone didn't betray him." "And when did you receive the order to kill Cassandra?" Vivian covered her face with her hands. "That morning when Tyrone called Damien and said Cass was going to tell all on the air. Damien contacted me and ordered me to stop her at all costs." "Where did you get the poison?" "Damien gave it to me a month ago, said it was for emergencies. I hoped I'd never have to use it." "And why did you agree to murder?" "He threatened not only my brother, but me as well. Said if I didn't follow orders, we'd both be found dead." Indira wrote down every word of the confession. The picture of the crime finally became clear. It was a contract killing, organized by the head of a criminal group to protect a corruption scheme. "Where is Damien Asante now?" "I don't know. After what happened to Cass, he disappeared. Said he was leaving town." "And his men?" "Most of them disappeared too." Damien warned everyone that the police would be making mass arrests. By late afternoon that day, Tyrone Rowland and Vivian Okafor were formally charged, the former with corruption and aiding and abetting criminal activity, the latter with first-degree murder. But the mastermind behind the crime, Damien Asante, managed to escape despite the best efforts of the police. "He's probably overseas by now," said Captain Jones, discussing the case with Indira in his office. "People like that always have spare passports and money for a rainy day." "We'll issue an international warrant for his arrest," the detective replied. "Sooner or later he'll turn up somewhere." "And the corruption network in the department?" "Internal Affairs has already started a background check on all of Rowland's contacts. I think a few more people are going to lose their jobs and their freedom." Indira sat in her office in the late afternoon, finalizing the case report, and thought about the price of truth in today's world. Cassandra Rowland decided to tell her subscribers about her husband's crimes and paid for it with her life. 200,000 people witnessed her death, but how many of them really understood what caused the tragedy? Social media has turned private life into a public show, where the line between truth and spectacle has been erased completely. Cassandra spent years telling beautiful lies about her happy marriage, and when she decided to tell the truth, it cost her life. Indira closed the case file and looked at the picture of Cassandra that lay on the table. A beautiful woman with a bright smile who had never imagined that her last words would become evidence in a criminal case.